The age-old question, how much should I plant? Well, I'm gonna be starting seeds today, so I figure this is a great time to go over it. And this is really focusing into the fall season because it's wildly different between each season. And I actually find that fall into spring are the best times to start figuring out how much you need to plant in your garden. So this is what we're planting today. We've got some Georgia collards. All of these seeds came off of one plant 3 years ago. So there's plenty of seeds there. We've got some beets, some mustard greens that we had saved, some bok choy, got some different lettuces. I've got a Sunland lettuce, supposed to be a little bit more heat tolerant, so we'll test that out. And then we have my favorite, Little Gem lettuce. So this is a really good one. We sell this in our seed shop too. Link is below. Also have a rutabaga seed that I am not going to show the packet for purposely. If you see it, you see it. But I do not support the seed company at all. I just happen to have these seeds left over. And when I order my next round of seeds, which I do need to get some onion seeds, I'm going to go ahead and get the exact same rutabaga, just a different company, because I just don't like the name being in my house. So we've got a couple different things going on here. We're starting 3 trays of seeds today. These are 50 cell trays and these are 72. This is a 72 cell tray. So we are doing these different. These bigger cells are set up for plants that A, get big fast, or B, mostly in this case, they don't stay in the cell long. And the last thing you want to do is be root bound. Go ahead and get the FAQ out of the way. This time of year, I do not up pot anything. I use a Pro Mix BX with mycorrhizae seed starter. I have made my own seed starting mix in the past for many years, and this works way better. It's much faster. I go through 2 to 3 big bags of this a year. Cost me about $100, and I don't have to keep anything around and mix it and do all that stuff. And then when I get into top dressing, I use perlite. I don't use vermiculite. So don't even suggest that I use vermiculite. I got plenty of perlite, and that's what I use. And I think that's all I got for the FAQs. Feel free in the comments below. You look at this and you're thinking, wow, that's a lot of seeds. And I mean, you are right, it is a lot of seeds, but there's a reason for that. And we have to look at this objectively about what we're doing here. So the big difference this time of year is the fact that these rutabaga seeds are 4 years old at this point. I'm hoping I get through them. The biggest thing is that each one of these plants isn't really a multi-producer, meaning it's not like a tomato plant where you're going to get pounds and pounds of produce in continuous harvest. You know, with this, you're going to get, like I'm planting the rutabaga right now, I'm going to get 1 rutabaga per. That's it. So there's no chance of anything extra. And I don't care about side shoots on any other kind of plant. To me, that's just not enough food. It is a good option in a pinch, but we're not in a pinch. So I'm not really worried about that. So, you know, there's a big difference, and I look at this objectively, and I have to be very realistic and say, well, what are, like, for instance, this rutabaga? What's the benefit of the rutabaga? Well, the benefit is it stores for a really long time in the refrigerator, upwards of like 8 weeks almost, if you do it right. So, you know, we can get a fair amount out of here, but we have to be able to, this should go without saying, but you should always gauge how much you like the vegetable you're growing, you know? You're gonna see here in a minute, I'm gonna plant beets. I hate beets, but I need to eat beets every once in a while. So we're gonna plant a few beets. And before you start sending me recipes for beets, I've tried them, I've done them, they're gross. But they've got tremendous health benefits that we want our family to enjoy and use. So we are going to do that. But we're not going to do a lot of them, right? Because what's the point? If I fill up a 50 cell tray, just like I am here with this rutabaga, and yes, I plan to grow 50 rutabaga plants. If I grow a 50 cell tray of beets, then guess what's going to happen? I'm going to throw them out. I ain't going to eat them all, you know? So I'm planning to grow probably 10 at most, maybe just do like 1 row. And that way, you know, we can have some and try to like them, get used to eating them, but at the same time, we're not wasting a lot of space in our garden. To deal with that, yes, I've got plenty of space here. I can grow a lot, but at the same time, if I'm not gonna consume it, then I don't need to put the stress on my soil. I don't need to put the stress on my pocket or myself in order to get it going. So there's really no use in growing something you're not gonna consume or use or anything like that. So for instance, like with this, these rutabagas, they store for a really long time. Now, let me double check before I say this, but anything else that I'm planting today, none of it is something, I mean, maybe the beets I would preserve. The mustard greens and the collards, you can absolutely preserve them, but it takes an hour roughly to can them, which is a really long time. So I'm not gonna do that. But at the same time, in my area, they will grow all the way up until January, then they will slow down, and then they'll kick back up into February. And then basically by the middle of February, they're gonna start to bolt. But we can keep these growing the whole time. So we don't really need to do a whole lot with them. We don't need to push them in any certain direction. We don't need to, you know, preserve them or anything like that. We're gonna get our fill, and then we can start freezing them if we have to, which if we kind of go back to this whole survival thing is not the best, but you know, preserving is preserving. Everything is all about survival all the time. It's just always in the back of my head. Here's another crop that needs more space, and that's these beets. So I've grown beets before. I'm not a great beet grower, but we're gonna do it, and we're gonna enjoy it, right? But we're gonna use the bigger cells for them. And again, I'm not gonna do a whole lot. Thankfully, these seeds are rather large, so they're pretty easy to seed. It won't take but a second. And I'm just gonna do 2 per cell. If for some reason I decide this year that I just fall in love with beets and all of a sudden my taste buds have changed, which is possible, they do, then I'll put them into the greenhouse and do a second sowing, you know, right around Christmas time or something like that. We'll make space or something, but for the most part, look, I got a sneaker rutabaga seed. Got to keep them pure, you know what I'm saying? So here's the moral of the story. When you are growing your food and you're taking it long term, you're trying to grow longer and more food, and really support your family with whatever reason you want. Quality diet, save money, doesn't matter. I don't care. The fact of the matter is you're growing food. Then we need to really take a step back and look at how much realistically you can consume, okay? So I know everybody wants to look at the days to harvest, but we have to be very realistic about that. There are so many factors into making the days to harvest hit. So we want to make sure that we can hit it if possible, but what we need to understand are a couple things. One is a whole group of things that are going to cause it not to hit that days to harvest number, which we'll get to. And then the one thing that stands out above all is no matter what, all of your produce won't be ready at once, okay? So even though we planted, you know, right now these rutabagas, I believe they are a 80-day crop. So in 80 days, they're not all gonna be ready. So that naturally will space out the way we can consume them, and then the clock that ticks for them when we pull them and we decide to put them in the refrigerator or whatever we wanna do. I've got 2 different kinds of lettuces real quick. I've got a little gem and then this Sunland romaine. So this Sunland romaine is gonna get bigger, so I'm gonna put it in a bigger seed cell. The little gem lettuce is exactly what it says. It's a much more compact plant. So we're gonna put that off to the side. Okay, so what affects your days to harvest? What makes a difference in that? There's a lot of things that can really and truly make a big difference. And one of them, which we all fight this time of year, is the sunlight. So we're in a situation with waning sunlight. So for instance, your garden is not gonna grow as fast as it was. Even if you had like if your garden was in the middle of a field, which I mean, you've seen mine, clearly it's not. But even if you're in the middle of a field, the sun is still not as intense. right? So in the northern hemisphere, if you're in the southern hemisphere, it's the exact opposite. We are moving farther away from the sun. Yeah. So we're moving farther away from the sun, which means the intensity is much less, which means that's going to slow the growth down. The other thing is temperature. So temperature makes a big difference because these seeds have an optimal growing temperature, right? I can't stress that enough. It's not just plant and go and no matter what. You know, if it's too hot, like there's a reason why I'm not starting spinach right now, because it's too hot. The seed literally will not germinate because it's so hot. So, and even though we're going to put these inside, but under the lights in the room with the sun beating on my house, it's still like kind of borderline. And every time I start them inside, they just don't do good. So I just wait and direct sow them in the garden. And it usually, well, always works out better. So the other thing is food. So how much are you fertilizing? And are you fertilizing correctly? So that's really important. In this seed stage, it's not that big a deal. So, you know, when they're in these seed cells, it doesn't matter really what you're fertilizing with. You just want to use a real well-balanced fertilizer. But as you get a little bit deeper into it and you start planting them, these are all going to be a little bit different. Well, not all of them, but the groups of them are going to be different in what kind of fertilizer you use. And that's going to change the speed. Not just going to change the speed, but it's really going to determine if you get a harvest or not. So for instance, these rutabagas and these beets do not need the same as these lettuces and then these mustards and lettuces and collards that we do. These are going to need more nitrogen and these are going to need very little nitrogen. So we'll give these nitrogen at first to get them up and going and get them really pushing so they can get the leaves growing to collect as much sunlight. But then we're going to change it over, and when we plant, for instance, we'll put a pre-planting fertilizer down, but we're not going to do repetitive granular fertilizers for it. And we're also going to skip every other liquid fertilizer for it, but we're going to put bone meal down for both of these. And that will ensure good root growth because we're growing root crops. The other thing is the amount of water that you use. So in the fall, it can, you know, in our area, for example, it can go multiple ways. It can be really wet or it can be really dry. But typically what's going on is the soil is very dry because we've had a hot summer, you know, and we've had a really hot summer this year. So I think we're up to like 60 days without a temperature being below 70 at night, which is a record. So, you know, it's been hot, and then next week's supposed to be 98 degrees again, and we haven't had a lot of rain. So what that means is the soil is not really hydrated very well. And even though you're watering it, I'm telling you, rain just, it makes all the difference in the world. So it's one of those things where it's like, you have to be very careful about how much water you give. And then on the opposite end, like let's say we got a hurricane or something, then you would sit there and you would be struggling because you'd have really saturated soil, which can happen to us too. So you need to really pay attention and you need to stay on top of it, especially as the temperatures cool down, the water won't evaporate as much. And these are the coin envelopes I told you that I use to save my seeds in. These work pretty good. I got a bunch of these super cheap. For instance, I'm doing 1 row of collards here, so 10 plants. I'm doing 10 plants of mustard. They'll each be planted 12 to 18 inches apart. And then I'm doing 30 bok choy plants. So, and we did, let's see, 10, 20, 30, 40. We'll do a total of 50 lettuce plants. And that will get us going. And the reason why is because we eat a lot of salads, stuff like that. And then, you know, the collards and the mustard, they will keep producing because the way we harvest them, we do cut and come again. So as I go down my row, I'll skip every other plant and pull the outside ring off of them. So if I've got 10 plants, that means each harvest, I'm doing 5 plants worth. I hope I use all these up. These are the bok choy seeds. And I'll be able to harvest from a plant, and then the plant can recover while I get a harvest from the next one. So you want to have enough for that. But at the same time, I don't need a whole bed of this stuff. You know, I'm not doing kale this year because I just don't like kale. I've had all kinds of kale, and it's a stupid plant. I don't like it. It's gross. So, you know, that's why we're doing so little of those. But the pak choi, which is actually one of my favorite plants to grow, it grows really fast, really beautiful harvest, and it's simple. I mean, I don't know. I've only grown it for 3 years now, and each time I grow it twice a year, ever since the first time I grew it, and it's just so easy. We get so much off of it. It's like a no-brainer just to plant it and keep going. You know, you can get it small, you can get it large, whatever you want to do. It's very diverse crop. And the flavor profile is totally different too. But it's also kind of similar to cabbage. So you can kind of work it both ways. So we just lightly covered it with perlite. We did not sink it, and so it didn't push it down, didn't bury it or anything like that. So that's it. And then that'll allow the plants to push up. Just take a minute here and talk about the opposite end of the spectrum and not planting enough, okay? So fall is a really weird time of year where it's kind of like you got one shot, right? You don't get an uh-oh and a makeup. You kind of got to get it in and get it out, and you also have to plan for some loss. So that's just the way it goes. But remember this, all of these crops that I'm starting right now are all frost tolerant. So they will be able to go all the way through. I mean, on average, I would say roughly at least a month past your first frost date if you have your plants mature enough, well fed, and going in the right direction. Then they should be able to survive that, no issue. So, you know, you just got to plan it right. But if you don't plan enough, then you're kind of doing the opposite effect. So I tried to build into my garden different ways to let the soil rest, to get maximum production, and then to also build for next year. So each one of these crops has a different plan, and we'll be going over that here shortly. I'm going to be doing my fall garden plan on the members live next week. So if you're not a member, you can be one below. Any tier will get you in, so feel free. But I'm going to be doing that live, and then there'll be a lot of discussion about what's coming out, what's the plan for all that stuff, and the plan for each beds. So this took a long time to figure out, and my hope is that we can take this garden, which is really, gardening is like doing a jigsaw puzzle upside down, but I want to start flipping the pieces right side up for you so you can get a little hint here and there. And hopefully this will kind of help you. But knowing how much to grow is super important because you're not wasting anything at that point. I would always, in the fall, I would side on the air of caution, meaning I'd plant a little bit more. And in the spring, I would do the exact opposite. But we'll cross this bridge again in the spring because it's, like I said, it's totally different. Our harvest techniques are different. The growing conditions are different. It's totally different, especially for my area in coastal North Carolina. Goodbye.